Hello everyone and welcome back to the Property Podcast Today show. I'm your host Lee Dahill and today we have Robin from Bamboo Auctions on the show. Now, as you know viewers, before we do anything useful, I always ask for some personal background and for Robin to tell us a bit about his journey in the industry and what led him here. So Robin, can you give us an overview please?
Yeah, and thanks for inviting me on. It's great to be here. We were talking previously that it's been many years since we've since we've caught up. So it's great to be on this with you.
Early days.
Yeah, really early days. I mean, and actually going right to the beginning, and I'll keep this short and sweet. But so I'm a corporate lawyer by trade, and I'm not practicing anymore. But that was my background. Sort of doing M&A private equity work, and I did that in the city for a few years, and really got into this almost 10 years ago now, just from a combination of sort of personal experience and I guess serendipity, right? Like there's some fortune around and some luck around how you kind of land into these things. And really, it was kind of to cut a long story short, if you walk down the high street of any kind of market town in the country, you'll often see these sort of beautiful buildings, where engraved in stone it will say sort of Joe Bloggs and Co, land, estate agents, and auctioneers. And part of the problem was that estate agents didn't have the auctioneer bit anymore. They kind of let them go. And so the idea was to basically give estate agents back the ability to have an auction. That was kind of like the motivation. That's kind of where we started. But yeah, I'm a lawyer by trade. I don't know what else you want to know about me, really. I'm a big rugby fan.
Nice.
Yeah, got two kids.
That's all good. That's all good. So it kind of is something you noticed and created a demand, created that for the industry. So let's talk about that in terms of Bamboo Auctions and how it works with estate agents and how it helps them across the UK.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, basically, what we do is we provide technology to estate agents, and it allows them to control, offer, and manage their own online auction service, as if it was their own. So it's about bringing their auction service in-house, and enabling them and empowering them to deliver that service themselves. That's ultimately what we do. That's how we work with estate agents. Our technology then is integrated into their website. It allows them it's fully branded with their own branding. And we give them a dashboard, and they get access to whole heaps of information, customer data, buyer and bidder activity, and we also sort of supplement that with other kind of features like CRM integrations and things.
Wicked. And in terms of the sort of online auctions model, what do you think that sort of do you think it's reshaping the way that the traditional property sale happens, and for the both buyer and seller?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think undoubtedly. Right. So I think, I mean, you hear the problems in the industry all the time. Transactions are getting longer and longer and longer. Transaction times are getting longer and longer. There's a race to the bottom on fees. There has been for quite a few years now. And there's a the fall through rates are, if they're not getting worse, they're certainly not getting better. And online auctions is it's one of the ways to solve that. From a transaction speed point of view, if you think about the average transaction, I mean, it's I don't know what you think. I mean, you must think it's crazy. I mean, you must see these all the time, but it's like you're talking about 6 months for a transaction to go through. And if I heard a stat the other day that if the property's over 1.5 million, transaction time is somewhere closer to 8.5 months. That's crazy. And that means that if you're an agent and you win an instruction on the 1st of January, that you're not going to get paid until August. And if you're really good at your job and you're a really good agent, maybe June. That's just, for me, that's kind of unacceptable. It shouldn't be like that. In the online auction space, it's around about 6 weeks, and agents get paid in 6 weeks. That's our average transaction times. So you're talking about winning the instruction on the 1st of January, going to market and getting paid, sort of end of February, March. It's a much faster transaction time. And then from a certainty point of view, obviously it's a much more certain transaction as well, because we're getting buyer commitments effectively at the point of an accepted offer. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that online auctions is a magic bullet for every single property in the market. I would love it as it was. But it's really important for agents to realize that it isn't a magic bullet, but for the right properties,
yes,
and the right seller, this solves a massive problem in the market. And it's not new, right? Auctions has been going for thousands of years, right back to the Romans. And so we've got tried and tested. It's a tried and tested method of sale. We're not reinventing the wheel dramatically here. So I think that's why and how agents can benefit from using the auction. And I think it's how auctions is kind of reshaping the way that we are doing things in the market.
No problem. And I want to ask you you said about the right property and the right buyer. Is there any types of properties or scenarios that are best suited to online auctions? And are you seeing that begin to change as auctions become more mainstream?
Yeah, I think I would say, so first of all, I'd say auctions is a heavily underutilized method of sale in England and Wales. If you think about kind of, for example, the Australian, New Zealand market, in the Australian market, it's closer to 50%, and in some Australian states, almost all sales are going through by auction. So it's pretty underutilized in the UK. We're trying to sort of reinvent the stereotype, I think, here. And it's not about the property, actually. It's about the seller. So I think that the first thing to consider is the vendor motivated? Is the seller a motivated seller? Do they want to sell quickly? If you've got a seller that's just kind of happy to kick back and wait 6 months until they get the price, this probably isn't the right method of sale. But if you've got a seller that wants to move quickly, they may have found their perfect property and they want to go for it. Or it might be that they're moving, or they're moving location, or any number of different things that might mean that the seller wants to move quickly. This is a method of sale that could be considered. The next question is then looking at the property. Is it a chain-free property, or is the seller willing to break the chain? That's where it starts to become, you've got your 2 ticks in the box. That's where it starts to become a much more auction-friendly type of property. So from that point of view, it's not for every property, but it's for those kinds of properties. Where we're seeing the kind of, change in and the progression in the industry, or in this sector, is around buyers and the types of buyers that are coming in. I think I don't want to say the olden days, but pre-COVID, let's say pre-COVID, the olden days, pre-COVID, you've got, I think auction was mainly the domain of experienced buyers and traders. And I think that is really significantly changing now. I think we're starting to see many more first-time auction buyers. I spoke to somebody just last week, never bought in an auction before, needed extra hand-holding. He happened to be a friend of mine as well, so that was helpful for him, I guess. But
definitely.
Yeah, and we're just seeing that pattern emerging. More first-time auction buyers. We're seeing different demographics. We're seeing more women in. So 30% of our user base, 30% of all bidders are women in our platform. That's a really large market that hasn't really been served very well in traditional auctions, I would say. And I think we are starting to get younger buyers coming through as well. And as the generations start to shift, online auctions are going to become much more popular. If you think that sort of today's seller broadly is at least a generation older than today's buyer, that evolution of use of technology and of use of kind of alternative methods of sale is only going to increase.
I do agree with you. And for some agents who might still be unsure about introducing auctions, what are the sort of common things you see and hear from them, and how do you sort of overcome that objection for them to help them?
Yeah, I don't know whether what I'm about to say is controversial or not, but I think there's an old stereotype around auctions that needs to be kind of debunked. And that kind of forms the basis of the objections, the major objections. I think the most common objection that vendors give is that their property isn't what you call an auction property.
Yes.
And I think even still today, if you were to talk to somebody about auctions, a lot of people would still say, oh, it's for distressed properties or kind of properties that are harder to sell. And that's a really old stereotype. If I'm being honest, it's not helped by Homes Under the Hammer, programs like that where it's really all you see is distressed properties being sold in auction. You never see kind of the nice chocolate box, nice looking inside. You don't see those kinds of properties in those kinds of programs, but they exist. And I think the best way for agents to overcome that objection is by doing a few things. I think demonstrating confidence in the product and in the service, greater knowledge of auctions and online auctions, and I think greater use of case studies. So showing vendors that it's not just distressed, toxic properties that could be sold by auction, but actually, breaking the stereotype and showing, demonstrating the case, with case studies that it's for really good, nice properties that are not distressed and not toxic, and it's not a method of last resort. Actually, auction probably works best when it's a method of first resort, not a method of last resort.
And you can still put the reserve and stuff, can't you, for the property for the seller with the agent, can't you? So you can still put that part of it, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. So you can so sellers can still set a reserve, and if the property doesn't achieve that reserve price, then there's no obligation to sell. So there is a kind of insurance blanket there for a seller, and that gives them some added sort of peace of mind and security around the risk involved in selling by auction.
Yes.
But ultimately demystifying and debunking that stereotype is the first step, because before you can even get to pricing, you've got to tell them about the service. And the common objection is at that very first interaction. We do that pretty well, I would say. I would say that at Bamboo, but one of the things that we have technology, but we're not just a tech business.
Yes.
We've got, I would say, one of the best customer success teams in the market. We are onboarding and training agents on how to handle vendor objections on a daily basis. We've got all sorts of different kind of materials and tips and tricks and strategies that help agents to overcome those vendor objections at the right point in the sales cycle. So, there's a different training set that you have to give to a negotiator as opposed to a valuer, right? So because their roles are different, so the training requirements are slightly different. So our customer success team knows that, and we understand that, we understand how, or we like to think we understand how an estate agency business works from a kind of traditional set. So our training is tailored for each one of our customers so that each person in their businesses knows exactly what is going on. They have the right information for the right conversations that they need to have. And that is kind of how we're going to overcome those. That's how we're going to break those stereotypes, overcome those vendor objections. And ultimately, it's going to help the whole market, right? So, if we can see the whole auction market increasing, that's going to be good for us. It's going to be good for everybody. So,
it is. I want to talk to you about. We touched on it in the introduction about the sort of way that you work with agents. So, how does the platform integrate with them in their existing workflow?
So from a tech point of view, we've got CRM integrations. We've got a CRM integration with Reapit. We're building other CRM integrations at the moment, so we're going to have other CRM integrations in place fairly soon. And it does mean that agents can then just list properties with one click, right? It's one-click listing, and they can push properties from their CRM systems straight into their online auction platforms. They still have the benefit of the Bamboo dashboard, but to allow them to empower agents to do things quickly, right? We want to give them one-click listing. So from that point of view, they don't have to do any double data entry or any of that kind of stuff. We've got a version. We've actually also thinking about it. We've also got so it's a pretty neat tool. We can identify in an agent's sort of stock list which are the most appropriate properties for auction. So so we're using kind of like a combination of kind of like machine learning, some really basic machine learning, and just general kind of tech to as part of our APIs to be able to sort of analyze what agents have already on the market and whether those properties are appropriate for auction, and then we kind of rank them as to whether they're kind of they're like hot auction properties or not necessarily appropriate for auction. And that then just sort of allows us and allows the agent to sort of highlight or be told or be informed about those key properties that should go into an auction that they can benefit from.
Okay. Brilliant.
That's a bit of a reminder. We've got a version 2 of Reapit coming out pretty soon. That's going to feed data back into Reapit from the Bamboo side as well. So that's going to be really powerful, save agents a load of money. And then from a non-tech point of view, from just a pure kind of sales progression point of view, look, sales progression is super easy with auctions because there's basically no sales progression, right? So like once with most of our properties, once the timer reaches 0, if the reserve has been met or exceeded, that's a legally binding exchange. So from there, it's just kind of seeing the property through to completion. But we've tried to integrate the online auction service into the existing sales cycles and workflows of our agents. So there's like minimal disruption to an agent's kind of daily grind.
Brilliant. And Bamboo, in terms of the news that that people have seen recently about passing 1 billion sales milestone, what do you think's driven that growth?
So I would say this, but I think we have the best tech in the market. I think that's helped. I think that has helped. And I think our technology does help get more sales over the line. We, in recent times, so we've done some upgrades to our systems, and some of the new features that we've got coming out just in the last couple of weeks, we've noticed that there are properties that we were thinking maybe were 50-50 around selling. And because of the data, that the new amounts of data that we've got in our in our new system, which agents have access to, those properties, I think, have actually been sold where potentially we're not quite sure whether they would have been sold in our old system. So I think there's a combination of us being having kind of the best tech, but we're also kind of looking for new ways to evolve and innovate. I think also the other reason is our customer success team are great at product engagement. But also, I think the other thing that has helped us to get to that billion, and probably the most important thing, is we've got great customers.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually we love working with our customers. And they are highly reputable. They are, they're good people. They're really professional, and they're innovative, and they know what they're doing, right? So when it comes to selling, because we don't sell the properties, our agent customers sell the properties, and so for us to hit that milestone requires, we need to have great relationships with our customers, relationships where there's like trust on both sides, where we're not kind of afraid to give our advice, but also that our customers are open to hearing our advice, and it works. It makes for a great, really long-lasting, trusting partnership. And I think we've got several of them. We've got over 1,200 branches now. Wow. And the majority of our customers, the vast majority of our customers, we have these like strong, trusting relationships with them that is helping them to grow their businesses, and that's how we've hit that milestone. So actually, the press release is saying that Bamboo has hit a billion through the platform, and that's great. But actually, it's also the agents working with Bamboo.
Yes, definitely.
Have achieved that milestone. So actually, I should say thank you to them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that you're, without them, any business, that is, without them, there is no business, right? So I think that's a very, very good way of looking at it, Robin. And my final question for you is on the future and looking ahead for what the sort of next 12 to 18 months holds for the online auctions space. And do you think estate agents should be preparing for that future? So what do you think the future looks like?
It's a really difficult question.
Get your mystic ball out, Robin.
So everyone's talking about AI.
Yep.
And has been talking about AI for a long time. And I think AI is fine. I think AI is only as good as two things. It's only as good as the data that goes into it, and it's only as good as the way you use it.
Yep, so the person operating it.
Yeah, 100%. If the error is between the keyboard and the chair, then you don't.
I like that. If the error is between the keyboard and the chair, I love that. That is 100% being used.
As long as you copyright it, shall we?
Copyright it.
Yeah, it's fine. No, look, I think if we're being serious, we look at the bell curve of technology adoption, right, for a second. Yep. You've got your early adopters, and you've got the people that kind of queue for the new and latest technology. I think we're actually now in the business of converting and convincing the sort of conservatives and the skeptics around technology, and particularly around online auctions. I think we're now in the business of converting and convincing the skeptics. That's kind of the last sort of 15 to 20% of agents in the space, and I think over the next 12 to 18 months, I think we'll convince that group of people. I think it's unavoidable now. any high street, there'll be somebody using online auctions. So if you're not using online auctions, then you're giving away an advantage to somebody else. So I think we are in that phase of technology adoption for online auctions. From there, it's about driving greater use of it. It's about product engagement and ensuring that agents get the best value out of the technology. We're a tech first business. So we're a technology business. That's how we see ourselves. And our technology empowers agents to deliver that online auction service. So, and I've said it a few times, but I do think we're the best technology provider in the game. But to keep ahead, we've got to keep evolving and innovating. I do think so. We are going to use we are going to sort of implement greater use of AI and data to help keep agents on the pulse when it comes to auction pricing and the kind of knowledge around auctions. It's almost like converting or sort of transitioning people into kind of an evidence-based selling tool. So you can say, rather than arbitrarily reducing prices, we can now sort of use our data and to support, to support price changes. So that's something that we're introducing. We're also looking at streamlining ways to identify and push properties into the auction. New products. We've got new exciting products coming out over the next sort of 6 to 9 months. It's going to help agents ultimately win more instructions, and then help them sell more properties. That's ultimately why we're here. We want to help our agents sell more properties. I would say also, I think technology in general should be used to make human experience better. So we want to build a community. We want to build an agent-led, agent-first Bamboo community. So that does involve greater sort of learning sessions, networking events, whether they're virtual or in person, customer engagement sessions, things that will help agents get more value out of using Bamboo, and also just in general learning more about online auctions. We want to keep giving value to our customers, so that they can ultimately kind of exchange ideas, share feedback, and learn from each other as well. Because I think as an industry, we're quite a collaborative industry, and okay, maybe there's competitiveness on the same high street, but we have there's lots of different networks in the industry where there is lots of collaboration going on, and I think that's a really positive thing. So from that point of view, I think there's both technology innovation coming over the next 18 months, but there's also a lot of people focused collaboration that I think is going to come out over the next 18 months as well.
Wicked. Robin, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm very grateful, and I really appreciate it.
Hopefully the next time we see each other, we both don't have a full head of grey hair.
Hopefully not. But with children, who knows, buddy? I mean, they're stressful individuals. Life is a lot simpler without them, my friend. So now we both have them. Before that, we didn't.
I think we'll leave it with you confirming that one, and you can explain that to your kids when they're a bit older.
Sounds good to me, Robin. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Lee. Thanks very much. See ya.